And again, the understanding of cancer that it's kind of like a bucket effect. It's not, people always think, what is the one thing? It tends to be an accumulation of things, and to kind of investigate what all those different things are, in addition to then bringing in tools that are restorative, regenerative, and not destructive, because we want to make sure that we leave the person healthier and stronger than when they arrive.
Hi, and welcome to a new episode of our new Light Medicine podcast. Yeah, today I'm very honored to have Dr. Michael Karlfeldt from Idaho in the US as my guest today. He's a medical director of the Karlfeldt Center, a very nice clinic focusing on integrative oncology, but also regenerative medicine. He is also running a very, very successful podcast and just launched a second book on successful ways to treat cancer. So he's basically one of the leading voices in the space of integrative oncology in the US. Yeah, and of course, he is one of the leading clinical experts when it comes to using lasers and light in tissue regeneration, treating chronic disease, and especially cancer. So we're working together for quite a while, a couple of years already, became good friends as well. He was lecturing at a lot of our conferences, always with great content, great success stories, and clinical experience. So again, I'm very thankful that you are contributing to our podcast today. So yeah, maybe we start with you telling us a little bit about your background and how the interest in light therapy started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been clinical practice since 1987, and original from Sweden, half German. So that's why I have that little kind of German connection. And I have a clinic, like you mentioned, here in Boise, Idaho, where we specialize in integrative oncology. Really incorporated a lot of light medicine, just because we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. It's just a passion of mine. One of the reasons why cancer is so dear to me is my father passed away from colon cancer, so that is one of the strong drivers. I didn't get to see him while he was passing away, but I know essentially it was just going through the traditional route and withering away to nothing, and just kind of seeing that I don't want other people to have to go through the same journey. There's so many other tools out there, and I think we can do a whole lot better than just traditional oncology. And people come in to me from a little bit all over the world for the therapies that we do. Like you mentioned, I've written a couple of books, both of them Amazon bestsellers. First one, A Better Way to Treat Cancer. And then now we just launched a book with Dr. Veronique that I co-authored called Breast Cancer Breakthroughs, where we talked a little bit more about how to integrate conventional care with the natural health therapies that we offer. So, and then, I do have an integrative cancer podcast, Integrated Cancer Solutions, another podcast, Integrated Lyme Solution, and a third called The Dr. K Show. So I love educating. I love kind of empowering people, and so that they have the tools that they need in order to be able to achieve what they're wanting to achieve health-wise. I love this. I love doing what I do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think you're just the perfect guest for this podcast here as well, especially when we talk about education and your experience. Then you just launched the book. I'm actually very much looking forward to receiving a copy when we meet next month in Las Vegas, of course. And yeah, what I already mentioned, we also just launched our third edition of our textbook on light medicine. So I will bring a copy for you as well. Yeah. So maybe you can explain a little bit the main concepts of your integrative cancer protocols, which you are doing in the clinic, like the therapies you're offering and how you combine things.
Yeah. And so the key when you're dealing with cancer, and since cancer is something that we both focus quite a bit on, but obviously when you deal with life medicine, regenerative medicine is very powerful as well. But at the core of my integrative oncology care is the photodynamic therapy. Yeah, is when we utilize and the photosensitizers, whether it's chlorine E6 or now an exosome version of ICG, 5-ALA, or even curcumin, as a powerful photosensitizer, or hypericin. So utilizing a photosensitizer and then activating that with light, in both intravenous, external, and interstitial, to trigger then oxidation of that cancer cell. So that's kind of the core. And around that, then I add other oxidative type of therapies, like artesunate, to trigger then ferroptosis, vitamin C to increase in hydrogen peroxide that's produced within the cancer cells to trigger that oxidative stress on the cancer. And then I want to then control a lot of the different cancer drivers. So there I bring in things like curcumin or EGCG or resveratrol that are powerful then to modulate a lot of these drivers that the cancer, the tumor environment upregulates in order for its own benefit, so that it can then control the tumor microenvironment and then also trigger then metastases. So if we can control that utilizing some of these different natural agents, and that's what's so great is that these agents are not detrimental. In addition to working on the cancer and the drivers, also helps to modulate and benefit the rest of the body in so many different ways, whether you're dealing with just regular inflammatory situations or you're dealing with autoimmune or whatever other type of other kind of diseases or inflammatory conditions that persons deal with. And then also we know that cancer has a deranged metabolic process where instead of then using the normal using oxygen to burn for energy, through your mitochondria, it shifts how it produces energy, not as effective way, but it is a very beneficial way for the cancer, where it then instead of using the oxygen, it actually ferments. It ferments and sugar, and that is how it then gains energy, and then also as a lot of substrates and byproducts, it can then enhance its tumor building capacity. So then we bring in things like poly-MVA and DCA, where poly-MVA, we do that as intravenously. You can also do it orally to drive then the mitochondria to support then the normal metabolic process. And then DCA will then block that fermentation process. So essentially what we're doing is that we are interfering with how cancer is able to then produce energy. So we're starving it. And then also we are then interfering with how it is then able to secrete byproducts that triggers more metastases and create a tumor-friendly environment. So we're interfering with that process, allowing then the what's called the apoptosis, the cell death switch, to be triggered through the mitochondria. And a lot of people don't understand that the mitochondria actually holds the cell death switch. So that becomes part of the product, the process. But in addition to that, working then on the cancer and the tumor and using natural safe agents to control the tumor and also trigger cancer cell death, we also look a lot at the root causes. We investigate and see, why is this taking place in this individual? That because cancer develops in a terrain, and we want to kind of shift that terrain so that it is not cancer friendly. And obviously you can cut out a tumor, you can radiate it, you can nuke it, you can bring a bunch of chemo and then shrink it. But if you don't remove then the underlying driver, the underlying cause, then you really, whatever the process is, it's still there. So we do a lot of investigative work then on the root cause, whether fungus, parasites, chemicals, heavy metals, traumas, And sometimes it's just a little bit of all of those. So we try to be a very well-rounded, use a very well-rounded approach to kind of go after cancer from all different angles, and also emotional and frequency-based. We bring that in as well, and spiritual connection. Because I think all of these factors is what's needed to be looked at when you are addressing such a complex disorder and disease as cancer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a very good holistic approach. And, exactly what you're saying, looking at the root causes of the disease. I think that's what modern medicine should focus on. But also in this context, what many people, especially when they suffer from cancer disease, would ask someone like you, what are your thoughts nowadays about the conventional therapies, which you already mentioned? So when you see a new patient and he would ask you for basic advice, would you recommend integrating also conventional things like chemoradiation, or how do you incorporate that into your protocols?
And that is always the challenge, is to kind of see how much of the traditional oncology care and how much of the natural therapies, so to say, or holistic therapies you should do. Um, and patients always ask me that question, if you were me, would you do chemo, would you do radiation, or would you do surgery? And I always tell them that, I can let you know what I feel now, but it's really hard for me to say if I was in your shoes, if I, what would I decide? And so what I say now may be different than what I would say if I was actually in that individual situation. We know that the traditional oncology, chemo, surgery, radiation, uh, it offers very limited benefits. I mean, it's great at shrinking things. It's great at cutting things out. So it is great at tumor management in the beginning, but it is not that good at addressing root causes, the reason why it's there, addressing cancer stem cells. That's a big factor that it does not address at all. It does address it, but it actually makes it worse. We know that chemo actually makes the cancer stem cells more aggressive. So it is, to me, crucial for an individual, whether they choose to do a lot of traditional oncology care or not so much, or none at all, to always incorporate the type of therapies that we do, that using some of the natural therapies to control the cancer drivers, to address the reason, to change lifestyle, to make sure that you shift the environment into something that the cancer cannot thrive in. So the challenge is for patients when they have cancer is that they look upon the tumor and they become very tumor focused. So everything is about shrinking that tumor, not recognizing that that is a symptom of a process that needs to be changed. And so that is what I tell my patients. And it's also important with the tools that the oncologists offer, just recognize that they're very limited in the different tools that they have. They essentially just have started with chemo, radiation, and surgery, and now we brought in more hormonal therapy and immunotherapy. So there aren't that many tools that they have, and they're very limited in what they are able to offer or what they're able to communicate to the patient. So they can't really say, hey, I think you should go and do vitamin C IV, because if they would do that, I don't know in other countries, but here in the United States at least, they can be put in a very difficult situation. They can become liable for, therapies working or not working. And also they can lose their license. So there's a lot of repercussions for an oncologist to communicate outside of his scope. And so as a patient, when you're then interacting then with an oncologist, it's just important to understand that so you don't feel like, when they say, well, there has not been enough studies for that or this, there's a lot of studies. I mean, you can pull up photodynamic therapy, for instance, and cancer. I mean, the amount of studies that you see just in PubMed, I mean, it's a thousands and thousands, or curcumin, or vitamin C, or artesunate. All of these are heavily studied, a huge amount of studies out there. So it is important as a patient, to be able to come in with that knowledge. And also to see, kind of look at the track record, of whatever the therapy it is that they offer. How effective is it? Yes, if you deal with lymphoma, leukemia, some bloodborne type of cancer, then chemo has a pretty good track record. Obviously, with the caveat is that you increase the likelihood of develop a secondary type of cancer after. So that's just a challenge with that. And same with testicular. So those are kind of the different ones that chemo has better track records. But then other ones, like let's say you're dealing with pancreatic and it's gone into the liver. It really, chemo really does not do very much then. Yes, it can maybe temporarily shrink it, and you kind of gain another month or so, and then it just kind of pops up again. The challenge with that is that now your immune system is suppressed. Now your ability to detoxify, you're weaker, to be able to battle with what's going on. So not saying that there's any kind of cure, for that type of disease, but I would try or bet on other things that may have a higher likelihood that is not at least proven to not work, like the traditional oncology in that situation. And then do things to support the liver, maybe bring in then, proteolytic enzymes, use photodynamic therapy, do those type of things instead, and just see if a miracle can happen. And sometimes you see incredible miracles. I mean, in fact, I remember one of those patients, with pancreatic gone into the liver. This was back in the 90s, and essentially I just gave him a few things and it turned around. All of a sudden, the cancer was gone. And so you never know, when you bring in things that help to support normal physiological function, to get rid of whatever that stressor is, support the immune system, and strengthen the tissue. So to me, that is a better option if you're in a challenging situation. Or another patient that, dealing with lung cancer, and the oncologist said, well, if we do these therapies, there's a 25% chance it's going to work. So, and then she's thinking, well, 25, that's not a very good. I mean, 75% not going to work. And then I'm going to be completely, I'm going to be miserable. I mean, my quality of life is going to be so impacted. And so she chose to do the therapies that we do at the center instead. And lo and behold, she's cancer free. And this is, many, many, many years later, she's still cancer free. So she chose when the percentage was not very high in regards to traditional oncology, she chose a different path. So there are lots of these stories when a person when they see that traditional oncology may not be the best option. And again, sometimes when it is not a good option, you can do a little bit of that and then a lot of the integrative. And then maybe, that is the right combination. And what is important for the patient, though, is that recognize that they should do what feels right to them. They shouldn't do things just to appease their spouse or appease their family or friends, just because they want to do that. It should be a combination of therapy that feels right to you as a person. Otherwise, you've kind of lost control of your own therapy. And we see statistically the person that is the quarterback of their own cancer journey always do better than the ones that just give up control and let somebody else just cannot take charge.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely right. And yeah, I think what you also mentioned, education is really key these days, and not just going to one doctor and getting one opinion. But on the other hand, sometimes, of course, it's also kind of overwhelming when you get such a diagnosis and when you go on Google and look for different options. And yeah, I think it's also difficult. So maybe from your perspective, you have some good recommendations for resources for patients where they can really inform themselves on a good level for on different treatments, on different clinics. Something like your book is probably a very good resource, or other things you can recommend especially for patients?
Yeah, I mean, so there's so many great books out there, and there's so many different directions that you can go. Obviously, the podcasts that I do, the Integrated Cancer Solution, where I try to bring in patients that have had different cancer journeys using different tools, whether it's vitamin B17, whether it's pancreatic enzymes, whether it's repurposed drugs, whether it's fasting techniques, whether it's metabolic, whether there's so many different tools available. And so I try in my podcast and to kind of bring that information forward. Yeah, I love, obviously, it's the reason I wrote my book. The laser technology is love, for people out there. If you're a doctor, I believe that is a place where kind of the cutting edge technology. I think light technology, oxygen technology, frequency medicine, and trauma healing. I think these are the cutting edges of cancer, using sound, using looking more in those directions versus just kind of being stuck in the old paradigm of these are the only things that are available. And also Dr. Nasha Winter's book, Dr. Paul Anderson, he's a good sounding board. So there are a lot of wonderful, Jane McClelland with her book. If you have Dr. Marcus, you have Dr. Dash, so there are a lot of wonderful people out there that's trying to bring knowledge out to really make us more effective in addressing this disease.
Right. So yeah, you already went ahead a little bit and talked a little bit about your some kind of experiences or patient experience. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about your clinical results in cancer, maybe some cancers which work better than others. Maybe you can share some more very more personal cancer stories related to PDT. So that's again what patients are always very interested in.
Yeah, and it is so rewarding. Like, for instance, we just had one patient that just finished her being here for 3 weeks. She essentially came in a wheelchair and breast cancer with fractures in her spine. It's metastasized to the spine. And then at the end, just had kind of the what now visit, kind of the exit visit, with her yesterday. And the pain was kind of a very, very minimal now. And she was able to walk around and she felt great. She felt phenomenal. And so it is just kind of looking at quality of life. I mean, obviously we haven't imaged her yet, because she's just been here for 3 weeks. But I mean, the change in quality of life. I mean, here she was in a wheelchair, extreme pain, opiates, and now she's off opiates, no pain. Well, I'm very minimal pain, and able to walk around freely and enjoy life. So what an incredible change, for that individual. And then you have another cancer patient, breast cancer, and she had gone into, it's gone into the liver, gone into the bone, gone into the brain, gone through all the different chemo and traditional oncology, triple negative breast cancer, and 2 children. And so she came to me and said, I mean, I've exhausted everything. I have 2 children, and I need to live for my children. And so we did, the cup. She was a couple of weeks that we did the therapy with follow-up therapies, and using the photodynamic and along with the other therapies that we do. And lo and behold, the tumor in the brain was gone, and still had a little tumor in the liver, and she was doing great, and she's still doing great. And we brought in some of the traditional oncology after. But now the beauty of it is that before it wasn't working that well. And now, after kind of correcting a lot of things, in the body, using natural agents to minimize, the cancer's defense mechanism, a lot of times then traditional oncology will work better again. So it's kind of finding that marriage of the two, and she gets to see her kids, grow up. Another breast cancer that metastasized. I remember she came into the office, and the radiologist essentially told her, well, you're just going to die in have maybe a month left, tops. And this is her radiologist, and then, being open to whatever the traditional oncology is able to do. And they said that this is all you got, even with all the tools that they have. And so I had to reassure her as she came into the office, understanding that with the tools that we offer, we can frequently change the medical picture, because medical oncology, they have their limitations and they know their limitations, but when you add integrative therapies, when you bring that into the picture, the abilities are different and the possibility of outcome is different. And so, and so she's still doing well. I mean, this was, again, many, many, many years ago. She's still doing well, with the combination of doing natural and then some traditional oncology. So she had just a year left, or I'm sorry, like a month left. So there's a lot of these stories that are phenomenal to see. And again, the understanding of cancer, that it's kind of like a bucket effect. It's not, people always think, what is the one thing? It tends to be an accumulation of things, and to kind of investigate what all those different things are, in addition to then bringing in tools that are restorative, regenerative, and not destructive, because we want to make sure that we leave the person healthier and stronger than when they arrived. And another gentleman, he was given, I think, 3 months left to live. And, the oncologist said, don't do whatever you want to do. You're going to die anyway. And came to me and, did the different therapies that we do, including the photodynamic. And cancer was also a stage 4 prostate, and cancer disappeared, and he lived well many, 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 many more years. So it is incredible what the body can do when you support it appropriately.
Yeah, very impressive work. So yeah, we're following your work for quite a while, and I'm always recommending patients, especially from the US, visiting your center, because I think you're doing amazing work there. Yeah, let's move to another topic, is like research on PDT. I think, we're still always trying to improve, enhance the effectiveness of the photosensitizers. We are now, just to give people a little bit of background, we are using nowadays so-called exosomes as carrier systems to bring substances more effectively into tumor cells for the photodynamic process. I think we improved a lot over the last couple of years, especially now with this exosome-based formulation. We see really dramatically enhanced effects in our cancer patients here in the German clinic. Yeah, what do you think? Where do you still see gaps? Do you have ideas where we can still improve when we talk about research, especially for photodynamic therapy?
Yeah, so the challenge is always, how much of the photosensitizer are we able to deliver into the tumor tissue, and then also how much light are we able to get into the tumor tissue. Because so essentially, like we all, not maybe all know, but you and I know that you need 3 components. You need the photosensitizer, you need oxygen, and you need the light, to trigger the photosensitizer, or sound. You can use both light and sound. But you also need oxygen. In order to be able to oxidize a tissue, you need oxygen to oxidize it. So you need oxygen there. And, there are different ways, obviously, that we can deliver oxygen. Hyperbaric is a way. You can do intravenous, and you can also inject directly. And there are also, we bring in ozone into the tissue. We can, so there are a lot of different ways to try to really increase that oxygen in the tissue. And then also, so I think at the end of the day, like what we've been doing is that bringing in exosomes. I know in the past I've been kind of using some nanoparticles of platelets. We're using that as a delivery. We've done stem cells. So using these different tools as delivery mechanisms, I think that is kind of where we're still learning how to do it the best. And kind of the next evolution is what we're doing now, using exosomes to help to deliver ICG. And we know ICG is the stronger type of photosensitizer because it reacts into infrared, which we're able to penetrate deeper with infrared just because it has a longer wavelength. So that's why photosensitizer like ICG is very attractive, for us to use. So I think they are kind of the main challenges that we're dealing with. Alongside with that, what can we do to manipulate the immune system to really respond? Because when we do the photodynamic, we have done a kind of a die-off of the tumor tissue of cancer cells. And when they die off, then we have an immune response and to these components that die off. So we want to make sure that that immune response is as strong as possible, so that they kind of recognize that these are cancer cells. This is what they look like, and then produce very specific antibodies and against, those cancer cells. Because essentially what we're doing is that we're creating a very personalized vaccine for that individual. Because you're triggering an exact immune response that relates to that tumor. Not just a general type of immune response, but it becomes very exact. So we can then bring in kind of a low dose, and we've been doing that low dose immunotherapy or other tools and to kind of upregulate the immune system so that it's more effective in having a stronger antibody response to the cancer cells that are released, so that we can kind of go after that. So I think kind of understanding the immune system and how it then can respond stronger, being more intelligent, being more effective, I think that's really powerful. And then also, how can we kind of get a stronger delivery of other tools, like vitamin B17, or, how can we kind of understand the individual's kind of genetic mutations better to then be able to then utilize natural agents that help to impact, those genetic mutations. Like mTOR, is that upregulated? VEGF, is that upregulated? PIK3, is that pathway upregulated? So kind of knowing a little bit more about the genetic mutations that are taking place, with the understanding, obviously, that every tumor, so if you look at tumor tissue, we think that is all one lump and every part of that tissue looks the same. But it's kind of like LA, it's a big city. And you have the, Chinatown, you get, Italy, you get Koreatown, you get all these different neighborhoods, that all respond differently. And then also it's going to react differently. So, I think understanding the genetic components, the mutations is very important, but I think it's also important to know it's not a be-all, end-all. We still are dealing with a very diverse population when you look at tumor tissue. So still addressing it from several angles and kind of knowing all those angles that we need to address. So I think the biggest thing, we have a lot of tools available, but I think it is how to combine them and when to bring in what and at what strength. I think those are what we're trying to figure out more at this time.
Yeah, this was a very good summary. And yeah, I think when we look at the things we are bringing in from our side, which is mainly the photosensitizers, which we already talked about, but especially the light technology, I think now with the interstitial intravenous light applications, we are already on a good level. We can bring good amounts of light energy with different wavelengths deep into the body. Where we always had a limitation was, of course, penetrating into the brain. So that's one of the next topics, or basically what we have been working on now for the last 2 years. We are just about to launch our new infrared helmet device for treating all brain-related issues. I think you also have quite some experience with that. So yeah, how do you rate the potential of a device like this, which is now really able to bring, uses hundreds of different laser diodes with multiple wavelengths to make sure we achieve a really deep penetration with the light into the brain?
Yeah, I'm really excited about that because I've seen way too many glioblastomas, neurocytomas, astrocytomas, or different type of cancers that metastasize into the brain. So being able to bring in a stronger light source to be able to impact, to cause a reaction to the photosensitizer we introduce, I think that'd be phenomenal, along with then using dietary strategies and also like the poly-MVA, DCA, curcumin IV to kind of cause that anti-inflammatory in the brain, or artesunate that also works really well in the brain as well. I kind of bring all these strategies together with a stronger light source. So I'm really excited actually about the new helmet that's coming out, using the old version of helmet and had great results and great effect just with that. But this is just going to be a game changer. So I'm really excited to bring that into my clinic when it's launched.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And of course, you will be one of the first to get one. And of course, we all are very excited to get first feedback from different clinics, from your clinic, from all over the world. Yeah, I also am totally convinced that this will be a significant game changer, not only for treating brain-related cancers, but of course also for neurodegenerative stuff. I think you also see some other patients with such issues, right? Now we mainly talked about cancer, but maybe in the end you can also, tell people a little bit more about other things you are doing in regenerative medicine, for example, and how do you incorporate the light in those protocols?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. We talked about cancer a lot, but my center, we do a lot of other things as well. 15,000 square foot facility. So we have a lot of different devices and a lot of different focuses, number of different providers. So things like ALS, MS, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, autism. There's so many different neurological conditions that essentially, you have infections in the brain, you can have heavy metals, toxicity in the brain, triggering inflammation, autoimmune conditions, of the brain or the nervous system. So, to bring in light technology to, and what's great with light is that it does so many different things. It turns on mitochondria. It works, especially on the, when you look at the red light, it really drives that complex 4 part of the mitochondria. So it really turns that on. And then also, if you talk about like the 4th phase of water, Professor Gerald Pollack, where we use light to actually kind of depolarize, the light or depolarize water within cells, to create exclusion zone water, easy water, that triggers like a battery effect, within the cell, and that in itself also help to promote energy production. And also we know that it upregulates the immune system, it controls inflammation, it does all these different things, and all of that is needed when you deal with neurological conditions. And then you can combine that with, in addition to using strategies to kill off infections. For instance, if you want to do intravenous methylene blue, and then use the light cap, we know methylene blue is very antiviral. In addition to being a great photosensitizer, in addition to turning on the mitochondria, so you can kind of layer strategies like that. And then you can also bring in then regenerative therapies like the BPC 157, TB 500, thymosin alpha 1. You can bring in, depending on what the individual is dealing with, you can then also bring in different peptides. There are about 7,000 of them, so there's a lot to choose from to help to regenerate that tissue. Then we have exosomes, and we have stem cells, and then we bring hyperbaric, and we can bring in lipid membrane type of medicine, like phosphatidylcholine, and also combining that with some glutathione and some nutrients to help to recycle the glutathione. So there's a lot that can be done utilizing this technology and layering that with all these other type of therapies that we know and have.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the beautiful things of light therapy, that it's working in synergy with so many great therapies you are doing, like the injection therapies you were already mentioning, peptide therapies, infusion therapies. Everything can be really enhanced by the lasers. So yeah, it's not only good in oncology, but in so many different areas of medicine. So yeah, thank you for sharing all your experiences in this field. Thanks for the great talk. And yeah, maybe you would also like to share the contact information for the clinic, or also for people how to get your new book, for example, or your podcast. So everything you would like to share, that was the opportunity.
Yeah, the best resource, just go to my website. It's thekarlfeldtcenter.com. So and then my last name, center.com. We do offer for oncology and Lyme disease, we do offer a 15-minute free discovery call. So if there's someone battling with that, then I would be happy to assist and see if we are the right fit. My podcast on cancer, that one, actually all three podcasts that I mentioned, the one on cancer, on Lyme, and then the Dr. K show, which is essentially get to talk about anything, consciousness, and also about controversial topics, other health topics, personal development topics. So there's a lot of fun topics at the Dr. K show. And so, and they exist on Spotify, on all the different platforms, iTunes, Google Play, etc. So you can just search up my last name and it will show there. And we have a bunch of free ebooks, resources. You can go to our website and click on resources, and you'll see all of that. And then my two books, Better Way to Treat Cancer. That one has been out a couple of years, but in that I have a section where I kind of in general go through the protocol that we do here, and also what to consider when battling cancer. And then for breast cancer specifically, I co-authored with Dr. Veronique, Breast Cancer Breakthroughs, and that's available on Amazon. Right now, we're actually offering the Kindle version for 99 cents, but that's a very limited time, so don't feel upset if you're a little late and not having that price. So we're just doing that kind of as a launch special, because we just launched a book, a phenomenal book, and that one focuses more on the challenge that we talked about in regards to combining, how to combine in traditional oncology care with natural therapies. What is the best way? We even kind of go through some of the main chemos that you would be exposed to battling breast cancer, and what kind of natural agents would benefit you when you're using this kind of chemo drug. And then going through then the 7 essential system of Dr. Veronique, the 7 things to really address and look at when battling breast cancer. So it's a phenomenal book, and really excited to empower people with that knowledge.
Yeah, wonderful. I think this was a good closing remark. I really hope everybody out there enjoyed the conversation. Again, I can really recommend, if you are suffering from a cancer disease, I think the Karlfeldt Clinic is a very good location for you. And also all his materials are really great to inform, to educate yourself. So go for that. And yeah, please continue listening to our podcast. We will have some amazing guests already confirmed for the next episodes. And yeah, I want to thank you again, Michael, for your great contribution, and for everyone out there listening to us. And yeah, speak soon again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert.